Barbarians out there, boy, are we in for a treat. The developers just finished their live stream. They posted the patch notes. I'm going to go over all of it for you, but let me tell you, it is looking good. Coming out of the PTR, we are looking stronger than ever. The theme of this season is going to be earthquakes. And the best part about earthquakes is you can fit them into basically any build that you want. If you like Whirlwind, put them in. If you like Hammer of the Ancients, that got changed, and I'm going to show you that. If you like Double Swing, throw some earthquakes in, and you can play any of the builds. Iron Maelstrom was even showcased in one of the clips from the developers, so maybe somebody can figure out how to get that to work. Let's hop into the breakdown of all of the patch notes today. I'll give you a little bit of showcase of how the new Barbarian is going to be working with Hammer of the Ancients along with the new chess piece. The animation is absolutely amazing, and the video that the devs showed did not even do it justice at all. When you see it live and running on an endgame build, it is beautiful. So hopping in, we're going to start with the Barbarian, brand new unique. It is a chess piece for you. The Mantle of the Mountain's Fury. This has actually been buffed coming out of the PTR. The inherent ability on this chess piece, 100% of Hammer of the Ancients damage for 5 seconds after an earthquake explodes. We'll talk about that exploding in just a second, and I'll show you a little clip of it. You're going to add armor, which is actually quite a lot of armor. It's going to make it really, really easy to hit your armor caps. Big ranks to Hammer of the Ancients, big ranks to defensive stance, and chance for Earthquake to deal double damage. Now, Earthquake is going to deal a boatload of damage, so this will be a great base modifier to scale off of. Now, we talked about exploding earthquakes. The power that you get on this chess piece, Hammer of the Ancients also forms a seismic line that deals damage and slows enemies it hit by up to 80% for 4 seconds. Any earthquake that it passes through explodes for the total damage, and it's consumed. There's a lot of ways to spawn earthquakes in this season, and we're going to use pretty much all of them. And every single time Hammer of the Ancients goes off, it does all of the damage that that earthquake would have done in an instant. The faster we spawn earthquakes and the faster we hit it with Hammer of the Ancients, the more damage we are going to do. Let's take a look at the clip real quick of Hammer of the Ancients with this chess piece on. I was on the PTR, so you'll get to see it with an endgame build running with some of the new seasonal powers. So this is it right here. If you watch, I'm going to have this orb floating around me. That is your Doom Orb. It's one of the witch powers. It was probably one of my favorite that we could use. It was very strong, added a lot of flair to this. So if you watch the numbers on this right here, we're going to be doing some big damage. The animation is really cool. The explosions from the earthquake, that's it going off right there. And it just keeps going off. 55 billion, and that's not even overpowered damage. It's just damage that's getting done.
It's the new witch
I was
power
just
that's
testing
flying
out the
around.
build. I didn't have any of my master working done. I didn't have really anything set up, and I'm flying through pit 90s just murdering things. So this right here is a boss fight. Remember, I had no master working done. I just threw on whatever gear that I could find. I barely had any GAs. This build was rocking. We are going to end up pushing high into the 120s with this. Once the gear is perfect, we get all of the aspects, all the legendaries, everything that you want to run. It went down very quickly. Ton of fun to play. I'm very excited to get my hands onto this here. So that's what it looks like running the chess piece. One of the aspects that changes, and we're going to go over this a little bit more because there's a couple more changes that we're going to see. The aspect of incendiary fissures. Your earthquakes deal up to 60% instead of 50%, increased damage, and their damage is converted into fire. This is going to play into the Ugly Bastard helmet that we're going to be running. Vehement Brawler augment. This is going to be a new tempering recipe. This is going to give us ranks to Heavy Hitter, Belligerent, and Warpath. The reason that this is going to be really big, in Season 7, the changes that are getting made to Heavy Hitter are going to be huge. If you look here, Heavy Hitters, your ultimate skills, Earthquakes, and Dust Devils all deal 15% increased damage. Now we add 3 ranks to that, 45%, and then you start stacking your Heavy Hitter ranks onto your weapons. We have 4 weapons, 4 tempering recipes. This can stack really high. The current season, that is not actually what the skills look like. In the current season, it's much different. So this change is actually going to be really big. This is what it looks like right now. It just gives your ultimate skill damage. So this change right here is going to play into how we temper our weapons and then how we play Earthquakes and Dust Devils. So your Whirlwind builds that are going to be running Earthquakes and Dust Devils alike, that is going to be a huge buff to that. Some of the game updates we have. New items and tempering recipes. We talked about a couple of them, so we'll skip over the ones that we talked about already. Aspect of a Pagaic Fury. Casting an ultimate skill increases your ultimate damage by up to 10%, up to 100% at 10 stacks. Your cooldown is then reset for that bonus. Now, when we get our ultimate skills ranked up, they gain additional powers at rank 5. This is a new change in the season that's happening. So this is going to give our ultimate skills some extra damage that we're going to be doing. Things like Call of the Ancients, where you can get that cooldown reduction to basically 0. If you're stacking this, you're gaining 10% increased damage to that Call of the Ancients damage every single time that you cast it. It's going to reset at 10, but then go right back into doing more damage. Vehement's Brawler aspect. Casting an ultimate skill increases your damage by up to 30% for 8 seconds. Gain 2 additional ultimate skill ranks. So that took a little bit of a nerf right there, but that's okay. They were over-tuning the ultimates to try them out on the PTR. So a lot of the ultimates were doing a massive amount of damage. So they tested them on the PTR. They scaled back the damage a little bit on the ones that were definitely over-tuned. We talked about the Mountain's Fury chess piece already, so we're going to skip that one right there, and aspect of Incendiary Fissures. And now for the balance updates. Barbarian skills, Hammer of the Ancients. Going into the PTR, it was at 70%. They bumped it up to 80% increased damage. That went up to 90 coming out of the PTR. They tested out Hammer of the Ancients. It was strong, but they wanted it to actually be stronger. Not just the earthquake damage, but the damage from Hammer of the Ancients itself. This next buff, I think, is actually going to make this really, really great for this rune here. The rune that we're going to be talking about is going to be Furious Hammer of the Ancients. What it used to do is you gain 2% critical strike chance for every 10 Fury that you had cast. Critical strikes knock down your enemies for 2 seconds. So now, coming out of the PTR, we are going to be doing 5% increased critical strike damage and critical strike chance for every 10 Fury that you have when you cast. Its critical strikes knock down enemies for 2 seconds. If you are running a build that has 300 Fury, you're looking at 150% increased critical strike chance and critical strike damage bonus, which means you will knock down enemies all the time, and you will have 100% critical strike chance all the time, as long as you keep that Fury up. I am so glad that Hammer of the Ancients is coming back because I missed this build. Mighty Throw actually took some buffs. Now, we're going to get to Mighty Throw a little bit later in the notes because there has been some changes to it, but the damage from Mighty Throw is going from 80 to 105, and then the pulse damage is going from 35 to 50. Kick, the skill ranks now increase the damage. They didn't do that before, just lowered the cooldown. So now we're also going to get increased damage to Kick. If you guys have never done a Kick build, I highly suggest doing it. It is hilarious. You just run up to monsters and you just Spartan kick them. It is really, really fun. Mighty Kick. Knockdown duration is now being increased to 4 seconds. Wrath of the Berserker. 5 ranks of Wrath of the Berserker are going to pull the enemies in instead of knocking them back, and it's going to deal 200% increased damage to them. This is the buff to all of the ultimate skills that we're going to be getting. Call of the Ancients is now going to have the Summoner tag. What that means is that anything with the Summoner tag is going to get the same buffs and increases that you have on those summons. So that is going to be a huge increase to the damage that these are going to do. That could make this a very, very viable ultimate skill. The new 5 rank bonus, when Call of the Ancients is active, you're going to gain 50% movement speed and 20% damage reduction from distant enemies. Prime Call of the Ancients is getting a 5% increase to damage. And this one confuses me just a little bit, but we're going to talk about it anyway. Iron Maelstrom. 2-hand bludgeoning slam damage increased from 60 to 75%. Dual wield swing damage increased from 33 to 43. Then they took the rank 5 bonus, which I guess it must have been hitting really, really hard on the PTR, and they reduced it by 20% of your damage to injured and healthy bonuses. The following skill tree upgrades, which directly deal damage, will now scale up their damage with the increase to skill ranks of the base skill. So Enhanced Charge is going to increase the damage, Mighty Kick, Power Throw, Battle Lunging Strike, Enhanced Rupture. So all of those are going to be an increase to the damage here. Now the passives here. We talked about heavy hitters. This is where they're adding in your Dust Devils and your earthquake damage. Defensive stance. This is also going to be added into one of your tempers now. Previous, increase the damage reduction gained when you are fortified by an additional 2%. Now, well fortified, you're going to gain 2% damage reduction and heal for 0.5 of your maximum life every second. That's just for 1 rank. Could be actually a really, really great source of healing, and you're going to get ranks of it on your new chess piece that you're going to be running too. Slaying Strikes. You deal 5% increased damage to injured enemies. That was what it used to be. Now, you deal 5% increased damage to injured and healthy enemies. Healthy is above 80% and injured is below 35%. So we're getting the benefit of this in 2 different places now. So we're only going to have to find a little bit of damage for that 45% where this is not working. So this is going to be actually a really, really great change because we take slaying strikes no matter what anyway, because when you're pushing the pits, it's a really great way when those high level boss fights get into that last 35% that you get this up and running. Unbridled Rage. Previously, your core skills deal 45% increased damage, but cost 100% more fury. Now, your core skills deal 45% increased damage, but cost 100% more fury. The damage is going to be doubled against injured enemies. So now your core skills are going to do double the base damage when your enemies are below 35% life. That's going to be huge, especially for pushing up against that timer in the pits when you're trying to get a little bit higher. Walking Arsenal. Previously, dealing direct damage with a 2-hand bludgeoning weapon, a 2-handed slashing weapon, or a dual-wield weapon grants 8% increased damage for 10 seconds. While all 3 of these bonuses are active, you're going to gain an additional 10% increased damage and attack speed. So what they're going to be doing, they're going to be updating this to try and bring it in line with all of the other ones. So they took it from dealing direct damage to now just casting a skill, which means if you can cast something in the air, that is going to actually activate this ability for you. You don't have to hit anything. Before, you had to be hitting something. So now, when you're running between packs, you can keep your buffs active by simply casting a bludgeoning, slashing, or dual wield attack so that you get 15% increased damage instead of 8. And then when all 3 bonuses are active, you're going to gain 25% increased crowd control duration and attack speed. That is going to bring Walking Arsenal in line with all of the other key passives and might actually be pretty viable this season. Legendary aspects. Executioner. This is the one aspect on the PTR that I pretty much assumed was going to get nerfed. This one was incredibly overpowered on the PTR. It still is going to be incredibly strong and basically mandatory if you're running a Quake build. What it used to do, killing an enemy with an overpower leaves behind an earthquake at their location, dealing physical damage for the next 4 seconds. That can only occur once every 4 seconds. Now, your overpowers will spawn an earthquake every 4 seconds that deals physical damage over time. Your earthquake's damage is increased by 15% for every 100 strength that you have. It was 25%, and we were scaling upwards of 5,000 to 6,000 strength on the PTR. There's a lot of ways to do it, so we'll have that in the build guides that are going to be coming out pretty much day one. We'll have some really great guides for you. What makes this okay is that we got buffs to every other earthquake aspect, and not just little buffs. If you look down here of earthquakes, previous, Ground Stomp creates earthquakes damaging enemies with physical damage over time. While standing in the earthquake, you're going to deal additional damage. Now, Ground Stomp creates an earthquake that deals physical damage over 4 seconds. While standing in that earthquake and for 4 seconds after, that is basically 8 seconds of increased damage, you're going to do 25% increased damage there. Your earthquakes are also going to deal an additional up to 60% increased damage. That was 25. So they took a little bit away from your executioner aspect. They put a lot more in here, but wait, there's more. Volcathos. Previous leap creates an earthquake that deals physical damage over 4 seconds. While standing in that earthquake, you're going to get damage reduction. Now, leap creates an earthquake that deals physical damage over 4 seconds. While standing in that earthquake and for 4 seconds afterwards, you're going to get 25% damage reduction. Your earthquakes are going to deal 60% increased damage. That's, again, up from 25%. We're getting so much more in other places. They took a lot out of one, and then they're giving it back to us in different aspects of the game and different spots where we can put this in. So we'll see how it ends up working out. It probably will be a little bit less damage, but still a ton. And let me tell you, the earthquakes hit real hard. Of Ancestral Echoes. Now gives a 40% summoning skill damage bonus. Your summons are going to be your ancients. Ancestral Charge now gives a 40% skill damage summoning bonus also. Encroaching Wrath. Previous, after spending 100 Fury, your next weapon mastery skill within 5 seconds is going to deal 70% increased damage. Now, after spending 100 Fury, your next weapon mastery or brawling skill, this is a really good change, within 8 seconds is going to deal up to 80% increased damage. So you can spend 100 Fury and you have 8 whole seconds to do either a weapon mastery or a brawling skill. Now, Ground Stomp is going to do a lot of damage, and Ground Stomp becomes a brawling skill. So that is going to be a really, really great way in order to increase the damage that you do with Ground Stomp and spawn more earthquakes. Of Herculean Spectacle. This is your Mighty Throw aspect. This was buffed from 35% to 45%. Twin Strikes got a buff. Previously, casting double swing 4 times, your next double swing would hit 2 additional times, dealing up to 80% increased damage. Now, after casting double swing 4 times, your next double swing will hit 2 additional times, each dealing up to 80% increased damage and stunning enemies for 1 second. Double swing is definitely going to be viable on the PTR. I heard a couple people that told me they were pushing it, so it does work. If you love double swing and this is the build for you, you're getting some buffs too. Unbroken Chains. 2 skill ranks of Pit Fighter is going to be swapped for up to 3 ranks of Slaying Strikes. So what that's going to do is that's going to give us that extra damage to healthy and injured enemies. We're also going to take the damage reduction that we would have been losing from Pit Fighter, and they're going to add it in for that increased damage reduction from 30 to 40%. The Ugly Bastard Helmet. Now, this helmet is definitely going to be something that we are going to be using all the time. It is so strong. It's going to be probably one of the, if not the meta for Barbarians. Fire damage bonus is going to be increased. It was already strong from 80 to 100%. Now, we're going to be converting all of our damage into fire through multiple different sources. So this is going to be a huge buff for us right here. Paragon. So for the Bone Breaker legendary node, previously, once every 12 seconds, your next skill was guaranteed to overpower. It sometimes really wasn't worth going all the way out of the way to get this. Now, every 12 seconds, your next skill is guaranteed to overpower. Whenever you overpower, your ultimate skills are going to deal 10% increased damage for up to 10 seconds, up to 80%. So if you're running an overpower build, something with Call of the Ancients, and you're going to be doing that increased damage, you can go up to 80% additional damage to your Call of the Ancients. Call of the Ancients is going to scale off of your own damage and your own stats. So this could be really, really great to take and spam Call of the Ancients with. A Weapon Master node. Now, this is what we have to use for a Whirlwind Hammer of the Ancients build. There was a buff to Whirlwind. There was also a buff to Hammer of the Ancients. So this might be something that I am definitely going to be trying. What this is going to be doing, previously, swapping weapons grants you 8% of your maximum fury. Now, swapping weapons grants you 8% of your maximum fury, as well as dealing 30% increased damage to injured and healthy enemies. So they're really playing into this injured and healthy enemy state here. The last thing we're going to cover for the Barbarians is some of the fixes that they did. Mighty Throw was snapshotting, so that was fixed. That will no longer be a thing, so we cannot snapshot with Mighty Throw. So I don't really know how it's going to fit into the new meta, but it is still strong. So if you're a Mighty Throw fan, it will probably still be pretty viable. Fix an issue where earthquakes were not properly consumed by seismic lines spawned by Hammer of the Ancients when using the Mantle of the Mountain's Fury. Fix an issue where the description of Power Kick did not mention that the upgrade made Kick a core skill. So Kick becomes a core skill when you use Power Kick. Fix an issue where Tactical Iron Skin would heal for way more than intended, because it was actually pretty crazy how much it healed for. Fix an issue where the screen would jitter when casting Whirlwind. This was such a big complaint when I was running my Whirlwind Hammer of the Ancients build in the current season. People would always comment about how much the screen was shaking, so this is going to help a lot. Fix an issue where Talik from the Call of the Ancients would occasionally fail to cast his Whirlwind ability. Additionally, Call of the Ancients now spawns the Ancients slightly faster. So you're going to cast it and they'll be out there much faster. So that's it, your Season 7 Barb. I'm super excited to jump into it. I'm going to have build guides out for all of this very, very soon. I'm expecting to hit level 60 in the first day, and we're going to hit the end game right away. I'll have builds posted, so make sure you follow along. Cannot wait to jump into Season 7. Let me know in the comments how excited you are, what you're going to be running, if you're going to be running Barbarian, what builds you want to see at the very end of your journey to level 60. I am live every night. Stop by, say hi, theory craft with me. Catch you on the clip side.